Hello everybody, today we'll do animations modifying the skew of the transformation matrix. We will do this using CGFI transform and modifying the B and C values. For our first animation, we will create one where the view expands a little bit and then when it contracts, it shakes. This shaking is what we will create it with the skew values of the transformation matrix. As we have done in previous exercises, we will create the animations using GeometryEffect. Now, a trick that we have been doing is creating a variable %, which is a CG float. Then, GeometryEffect has this variable animatable data, which can be of type CG float, and in the getter and setter, we use %. Now, why are we doing this? Well, first in the init, we will init this GeometryEffect with a boolean, right? Depending on the value of that boolean, we will assign the %0 or 1, meaning between 0 and 100%. With this, now we have a way of tracking the stages of the animation. This is what will tell us the percentage of complete of the animation, because SwiftUI will be using this animatable data to go back and forth with the animation progress. And now, since we can track it, well, we can divide our animation into stages and create our own effects. And what are going to be the effects of this animation? Well, first, if the animation is complete, meaning it is at 0 or 100%, we return a projection transform with the identity, so there's no modifications to the view. If the animation is ongoing, then we do the effects. So for the first half of the animation, meaning below 50%, we will do the expanding of the view using CG-affine transform and scale. So here we just return a projection transform, initializing a CG-affine transform with the scale on y being 1, and for x we will gradually increase it to 2 times using the %. For the shaking part of the animation, let's divide that into its own 4 different stages. We'll do it equally, so each 25% we're going to change the animation. We will do this again with CG-affine transform. It needs to be a var, since I'm going to be changing, well, the proper mutating it. What I'm going to do to control the skew is going to be C. This is the skew horizontally. And let's assign a max skew. How I'm going to do the shaking is on each of the stages, I'm going to assign the skew either a positive or negative value and then decrease it on the later stages. Here is the final animation where in the first 2 stages, it goes the max skew first to one side, then to the other, and then on the 2 last stages, it goes half of the skew. Now let's go to our home view and add this animation to the button. To trigger the animation, we will use a boolean. As it was seen in the geometry effect we created, we need the boolean to change, so it triggers the animation. So changes the percent from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. And that's why we'll have this Boolean state, which we will change on appear, so it changes after the view is rendered. That's important. And the same goes for the animation value, which in this case is going to be linear. We're getting a weird behavior, but this was because I'm not changing the value in the main queue. Well, let's do that and see how this looks. Okay, here we have the home, and we do have the animation. It's going a little bit fast, so let's add more duration to the animation. Okay, so 2 seconds, that would be much better. And another thing, if you could notice during the animation, is the shaking wasn't being done correctly. That's because the anchor point for these animations is not the center, it is the origin, 0, 0. So we need to change that with a trick that we use for the rotation animations that we did on the previous exercise, and we will do it as well here. So how do we switch the anchor point? The CGFI transform that before we were initializing with the identity is now initialized with translation. The translation will be negative half of the width and negative half of the height. Then the part of the skewing, we leave it as it is. And then we concatenate a projection transform that is doing another translation, but it will be the reverse of the initial part. So that is half of the width and half of the height with a positive value. But scratch that. Something that's important is that we are concatenating this transform for the anchor point, the first and the second one. So let's create an anchor point transform. Then the skew transform, let's concatenate it to the anchor point transform, and then we concatenate the projection transform. Now let's also fix the scaling. The scaling was also not being done from the center, but from the origin. So we'll assign even more time for this animation, so 3/4 of the animation will be the scaling, and we will also apply the anchor point trick with the transform. Let's stop here and continue. And now it looks much better. We need to tweak a little bit the animation just to, so it seems that it is shaking, but we have the scale and the skew. Last thing we need to modify is we don't want it to scale to twice its size. It's a lot for that animation. It doesn't look neat. So let's run again. Okay, good. More polished. Let's move on to the next one. Our tilting animation will be also a geometry effect, and we will be doing the same trick with the percent. We will also be applying the anchor point transform since we also want the tilting to originate from the center of the view. Now for the tilting, we will also divide it into 4 stages, and the concept is pretty much the same than what we did for our shaking animation. The only difference is that instead of modifying C, we're going to modify B. Okay, here's our tilt. Now that we have that ready, let's add it to the view. So we will also add this to the home view, and the tilting animation, we will not add it to the bottom, but to the title, the one that says Welcome Developer. Let's add another linear animation that repeats forever, but let's make it a little bit different. So first of all, it will last longer, and let's add also a delay. So it will tilt, wait for 1 second, and then repeat the animation. Okay, you see the delay? It didn't start immediately, and there we have our tilting. Maybe we need to decrease the time since, well, we're not getting quite a nice tilting effect. It looks weird. Let's reduce the duration and also the tilting. Let's see how this looks. Okay, good. I like that. And that was all. We have now our shaking and tilting animation by modifying the B and C variables of the CGFine transform. As you can see, not only does this create a nice animation, but it can easily be concatenated with other animations like the scale. Hope you liked the video. Bye.